Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to talk a little bit about slope operations. So, as most of you probably are aware, the world is not flat. And why do we care about that? Well, when it comes to landing a helicopter, helicopters are a lot less tolerant, if you will, of slopes than airplanes might be. And why is that? Well, the helicopter tends to have a higher center of gravity. So it is easy to roll over a helicopter if you try to land it on too much of a slope. Now, there are a couple of options when it comes to landing on a slope. The most popular option is to land parallel to the slope. In other words, one of the skids is going to be uphill and the other one's going to be downhill. You can land a helicopter where you are either facing up or down the hill. It is not recommended, especially the down the hill orientation. The problem with the down the hill orientation is that you are going to have a possible tail strike. So the hill is taller where the tail is than it is where the rest of the helicopter is. So you're much more likely to strike the tail. So up the hill is definitely preferred to down the hill. But again, most common situation is to go across the hill. And you might say, well, how much of a hill can I land on? Most helicopters, anything more than 5 degrees is too much because they will just roll down the hill, and you get things like dynamic rollover or even static rollover if it's extreme, and that's something you need to be aware of. Okay, so how does this work? What's the technique? So the technique goes as follows. First of all, you want to approach your hill. So you typically want to approach your hill at a 45-degree angle. You don't want to come straight at it, and you don't want to come along the hill necessarily. So you want to approach it at a 45, and then as you get close to the hill, you can start turning along your hill. Then what? Well, you want to get it in a nice stable hover, hopefully headed into the wind, that's preferred as always, and start to drop the collective nice and slow. So eventually what's going to happen, number one in the picture here, you're in a hover and you start dropping the collective, you start to settle towards the surface. We transition to frame 2 in this picture where the uphill skid has made ground contact. So once this skid has made this ground contact, you want to begin feeding pressure into the hill. You want to apply that lateral cyclic into the hill. In the case of this picture, that would be toward the left. And what you're doing is you're just trying to hold that skid there. You don't want it sliding up or down the hill. Of course, if you're flying to grass, which is very common to have a slope on grass, it's a lot easier to stick the skid. And again, slow, slow, slow. Right? You can't go too slow with all of this. Slow and smooth. If you go too fast, you can stick the skid, and if you go too much lateral cyclic, you could roll the helicopter over up the hill. And if you don't apply enough, you could start sliding down the hill. A lot of opportunity for something bad to happen here. So again, slow. Once you have that skid nicely stuck into the hill, then you want to slowly lower the collective. And as you lower that collective, you're going to keep on feeding in lateral cyclic into the hill, right? Your controls are becoming less effective, so you really need to stick it in there and make sure that you're not going to slide down this hill. Nice and slowly, and then eventually you're going to get to the situation where both skids are down. Once that's happened, you will slowly drop the collective and return the controls to neutral. How do you pick yourself up from the slope? It's pretty much just the reverse of landing. What do you want to do? You want to slowly raise the collective. Now, of course, before you do that, you want to hold that cyclic back into that hill, that lateral cyclic. Start raising the collective. That will raise the downhill skid. And a lot of people will recommend that you kind of pause once you get to a level attitude where one skid's still on the ground, the other one isn't. That is situation 2, frame 2 in this picture. So frame 1, we're still on the ground. You can see that the rotor is tilted into that hill because of the lateral cyclic. Start to bring up the collective. Now the downhill skid is going to come up. Once that is up, go ahead and start to leave your hill. Now you want to go away from the hill. So that's picture number 3. As soon as you get to a hover, you want to have some lateral pressure away from that hill. Once you're sure that the tail is clear, you can actually, turn away from the hill instead of just sliding away from it. So that is the basics of a slope landing and takeoff. As I said, a couple things you got to worry about. Can roll the helicopter if you stick a skid. Slow helps to avoid things like dynamic rollover, which you don't want. So, other things that you might see, sometimes people are so focused on the cyclic that they forget about things like the pedals, and you might start to yaw around on the hill. There are several things that can kind of go wrong in this exercise. Let's go ahead and look at some flying. So here I'm approaching the slope. So now my uphill skid is down and I'm going more lateral cyclic into that hill, which is to the right in this case, and slowly bringing down the collective. There we go. Down. Now to neutralize the controls once I have the collective full down. And it's time for a pickup. So back into the hill, and then we pick it up with the collective. A good exercise, you can actually just pause here. Some people will actually even go up and down. They'll keep the uphill skid planted, and they will work the collective so that they can raise and lower the downhill skid. And that's not a bad thing to do. It's a nice bit of practice. Again, slow, smooth. Don't roll your helicopter, please. So here we've broke ground with the upper skid, and I am sliding away from the hill. And once I get a good distance away, that same thing with a different perspective. I'm about to plant that uphill skid. There it is, it's planted. So now I'm going to increase the lateral cyclic into my hill and slowly lower the collective. And now I'm down. Once that I'm down, I'm going to go ahead and neutralize my controls once the collective is fully down. And I'm ready to pick up. Pick up is pretty much the reverse. So I'm going to start. There you go. You can see that the lower skid has come up. Make sure that I have plenty of is how you do a slope landing in a Schweitzer 300 CBI, or it's not just the Schweitzer, pretty much any helicopter. By the way, in case you're wondering, this is done at the Helicopter Parkour Airport, which is EDX2 in X-Plane. So if you do a little searching, if you also want to play with X-Plane, this is a fun little thing. They have a couple of pinnacles you can land on and a couple other little obstacles. Okay, so that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it.